I'm chafing. The Biden White House cracking down on freedom of speech just days after Elon Musk's Twitter takeover. Coincidence? DHS Secretary Mayorkas announcing plans for what he calls a disinformation governance board to combat misinformation ahead of the midterms.
We have just established a mis- and disinformation governance board in the Department of Homeland Security to more effectively combat this threat, not only to election security, but to our homeland security.
It sounds like the objective of the board is to prevent disinformation and misinformation from traveling around the country in a range of communities. I'm not sure who opposes that effort.
Oh, I smell a rat. The group will be led by a far-left Russia expert who called Hunter Biden's laptop, quote, a Trump campaign product in 2020. Some expert. She's also been vocal about her disdain for Elon Musk, saying she shudders to think about the billionaire taking over Twitter. Anti-Musk fever, practically a prerequisite for any job in the White House, as more Democrats pile on the world's richest man and his love of free speech. Liz Warren taking another shot last night.
We need rules of the road. And look, there are going to be rules. Like I said, the only question is, will Elon Musk decide all the rules by himself in a dark room, or is it going to be the case that we're going to decide this as a country? We're going to make rules in a democracy. Rules of the road could help facilitate that kind of competition and, frankly, break the stranglehold of someone like Elon Musk coming in and just owning the whole thing.
She'll say anything for wampum. Judge, what a coincidence that this is just happening this week. It has to. There's no connection whatsoever to the elections or Elon Musk.
Well,
what do you think?
Know, I agree with you. It is a coincidence, but on the other side, you have to say to yourself, isn't it amazing how fast they got this disinformation group together?
Yeah.
I mean, given how long it took them to get weapons to the Ukraine, well, really, even with Zelensky saying it's a pity, and that's Zelensky's words, they didn't get the weapons to us, or given how disorganized they were in getting out of Afghanistan. And just as an aside, why didn't they think about taking the weapons from Afghanistan and give them to Ukraine? That would have been a smart idea. But look, this whole thing is very organized. You got Barack Obama, an ex-president of the United States, coming out and saying, we want content moderation. Now you've got these people saying we're going to have a disinformation group where we can say what we think is not correct. And, we've suffered under their thumb for 4 years of the Russia collusion delusion, along with the Hunter Biden laptop being Russian disinformation. I mean, they have lied to us repeatedly. But, the only thing that they want is they want to be able to control what we say and what we say to each other and what we think. So their hatred of Elon Musk, I mean, it is palpable. See, Joey Reid last night, we talked about, he just misses the apartheid of South Africa, Elizabeth Warren. Think of what they're doing to him behind the scenes if they're doing this right in front of everybody. And it's real clear. The Constitution of the United States allows for free speech. No government has the right to moderate, define, or limit free speech. That is in the Constitution. It is a First Amendment for a reason, and it is affirmed by the Supreme Court over and over again. And their effort to muzzle us under the claim of free speech, unless it's obscenity, child porn, or fighting words, is really an effort to control this country in a way that we've never seen before.
It's like, Jason, now it's like if you're for free speech, you're now labeled a free speech absolutist. like somehow you're an extremist. Oh, did you hear he's an absolutist? Here's the thing. They create this board. What can they actually do? I mean, like could they sit and watch The Five and go, Greg said he bet Jesse $1 million he couldn't lift his mug. He really did. He doesn't really going to pay that $1 million, is he? I mean, are they actually going to look at shows and see what they're doing? And do they have any authority to do anything?
I don't think they have the authority, but they're going to try. Secretary Mayorkas, he looked like he was live from Beijing telling us, how everybody is, what they can say, how they can say it. This is allowable. This is not allowable. They tried this before, about 10 years or so ago. It was called SOPA, Stop Online Piracy Act. There were Republicans and Democrats. They tried to give Homeland Security unilateral authority to take down websites. So this is a playbook that they went to under the Obama administration. They're trying to do it now, but I think what they're really afraid of with Elon Musk is he's going to peel back and expose what was going on with the shadow banning, about how they manipulated the social media to be for their team on the Democratic side of the aisle and against conservatives. That's what I think they're really afraid of. And the guy is only, he said he's only going to be successful if he's politically neutral and allows Democrats and Republicans to go out there.
You know, Dana, the fact that this expert or this person in charge, you know, pushed that letter of the 50 former national security officials, called the laptop fake, and then you have Mayorkas, and it's like, remember the Whipgate thing? That was probably one of the biggest misinformation scams. How can they pull this off? Like, how can this happen? Why her?
It's interesting. I've brought this up before. Remember Ainsley Hayes? She worked in the West Wing for President Bartlett on the show.
I never watched the show.
So she was a Republican, and they made her work in the basement. And every once in a while, they would pull her upstairs and say, "How do you think the Republicans are going to feel about this?" And she'd be like, "Oh, I wouldn't do that. You can do this, but not that." They need an Ainsley Hayes in the administration, because I can't imagine that anybody at this meeting said, "Do you think it's going to be a problem that she's going to be in charge of it?"
Yeah.
Well, why would that possibly be? It would never have occurred to them, so they don't have an early warning system. But I don't think that DHS has the authority to do this under the Congressional Act that established DHS. Now, it's too broad, I get that, but this was certainly not included. The thing about Elon Musk, he doesn't care if he's liked.
Yeah.
And it's driving the left absolutely crazy. There is a little bit of a model for this. It also doesn't work that well, although they try. It's called the Broadcasting Board of Governors, and it's controversial under every president. The way they set it up is there's 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats, and the chair of the board is the Secretary of State, whoever that happens to be at the time, and they try to adjudicate things. That might be a better way. You can't just have bureaucrats going to be in charge of free speech. Like, they've missed the entire...
It's the Ministry of Truth.
This doesn't make any sense. Also, something very strange is going on. I'm not buying it that all of a sudden 100,000 more people decided to follow me overnight. The Percy pictures are great and all, but I find that very hard to believe. And I think Ben Shapiro got like 500,000 new followers. Like, something weird was happening.
Yeah, that's true. So, Jessica, if let's say this was under a different administration and the political bias and ideology were going in a direction you didn't like, you would be scared. When I see that this person is a left-winger who dismissed the laptop before there was even any evidence that she just did it because she knew that she had to win an election, you would be scared too. You can't have a bureaucrat with an ideology in charge of speech. You shouldn't have anybody in charge of speech.
Well, everyone is entitled to their ideology. We're just not supposed to know about it. That's how it works. You go into a voting booth, you do your business, and then you go back if you work in government and you do your job.
You also vote there, not just do your business.
That is disgusting, but funny. Yeah. And I walked right into it. I would agree with you. She did defend those comments by saying that she was live tweeting the presidential debates. But obviously, I've seen a lot of footage of this. You could make the case that she certainly had more left-leaning opinions, though she does have a pretty impressive background and was at a nonpartisan center, the Wilson Center, doing her work. She has a lot of experience in Russia and in that world. She started out working in Belarus.
Named after Woodrow Wilson?
I believe so. I know where it's supposed to be canceled,
Communist.
Right? Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, so they said that the point of this is to target misinformation about Russia and also the border, which I think is interesting and something that should appeal to conservatives. And one of the examples that they threw out was that across Facebook and WhatsApp in Haiti, they had misconstrued what President Biden had been saying about immigration policy, essentially saying that he was going to welcome everybody. And 14,000 Haitians showed up at a border town and were trying to get into the United States of America. Now, what the government is saying, or DHS is saying now, that they want to be able to tap into problems like that and to stop it before another 14,000 people show up and say, hey, we heard there was an open border here, we'd like to get in. Now, in terms of whether this is legal or within the rights of DHS to do, I don't know. They certainly feel that way, but they've been organizing this for months. This woman came out and said this. It wasn't just something happened overnight. She's been working on it.
Fair enough. If they were organizing it for months, then the first thing they should do is address the misconstrued rain for whip, which is a border issue. While they ignored all the concerns, Jessica, they went after a guy. That's the first thing that would be the example they should have used. Like, you know what? That would have been really smart. You know, we screwed up. We actually produced misinformation and disinformation. We blamed the wrong guy. We did this investigation. We found out the guy was innocent. I would trust them more.
Would you, though?
Yes, I would, because I'm an open-minded person, Jessica, a loving, open-minded person. You know, I think we should start testing this. And on the 5, start saying things that they might think is disinformation. Just
Like that you're a loving guy?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I want them to fact check that. All right, enough. She probably hates the 5, that lady.
Oh, she doesn't like the 5.
She doesn't like the 5. Yeah, we're going to have to deal with this.
You never know. There's very high liberal viewership.
I know. Well, higher than most other places.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.